Welcome everybody. Welcome to our next study. Our next study is entitled How God Gets Our Attention. It's a devotional I put together a few months ago, and it centers on the book of Amos, specifically chapter 4 of Amos, verses 1 through 13. And I'm going to break it up into a few parts as not to make it too long on our YouTube channel. And for tonight's part, we're going to just talk about a little bit of the background of Amos, when it was written, who it was written to, and we're going to read an illustration, and then we're going to just close in prayer, and then we'll start our next segment of this that's titled How God Gets Our Attention. And so it focuses on the prophet Amos, who wrote between around the year 760 BC. Okay? He wrote primarily to the northern kingdom of Israel. Amos was a herdsman in Judah. He was a poor man. He cared for the sycamore tree, which was then known as the fruit of the poor. And he traveled the worship centers of Israel where the rich idled. Okay? Where the rich idled. And to proclaim God's damnation of their distorted values, condemnation, of their distorted values. So Amos was sent by God as a prophet, and we're going to talk about this in 760 BC, but fast forward to our day and age, and always keep that in mind when we're doing these Bible studies, that everything in God's Word has relevance to what is happening today. And we'll see that when we put everything together. But just as the rich then were idle, the word says they were idled, basically filled with their own desires, their own things they were seeking after, their own pleasures they were seeking after, and neglecting God's word and applying it to their lives. And so Amos was sent as a condemnation of their distorted values, just like we today have distorted values. So let's read an illustration. It's entitled Mr. Lukewarm. It's from the Encyclopedia of Illustrations, and it goes like this. Mr. Lukewarm. Recently I talked to a man I will call Mr. Lukewarm, for he is neither cold nor hot. He says he is a Christian, but seldom attends church. I am under a great deal of tension where I work, he explained, and often go fishing on weekends for relaxation. Church is all right, but a person can't do everything, you know. Mr. Lukewarm also had an uneasy conscience about his giving, for he continued, I put $1 or $2 in the offering plate whenever I go, and I think that's all God can expect of me. If I gave 1/10 of my income, it would amount to more than $2,000. You just don't know how expensive it is for me to maintain my cabin at the lake and pay dues and to keep my membership at the country club and the bowling league. Anyway, churches put too much emphasis on money. Sometimes I get so disgusted with this talk about sacrificing for Christ that I feel like quitting altogether. That is from our friend, Mr. Lukewarm. Does he sound familiar to you? We'll be back with part 2 of our segment on how God gets our attention.